Today, we'll talk about some common mistakes in designing REST APIs. First mistake, lack of API versioning. When creating an API, it is important to plan for its growth over time. API versioning is like labeling different editions of a book. It ensures that changes and updates to the API won't break the things for users who haven't updated their apps. Imagine this: you launch a mobile app with an API that lets user access features. As your app grows, you add new features and update the API. But not everyone updates their app right away. Without versioning, users with the older app versions might have problems because their app isn't compatible with the latest API changes. By using versioning, you can add new features to the API without causing issues for users on older app versions. Each API version is like a snapshot in time, making sure older app versions still work as expected. Second mistake is not using pagination. Pagination is crucial for improving application performance. It breaks large chunks of data into smaller, more manageable pieces, like dividing a book into chapters. Instead of loading all the information at once, it's split into pages. Imagine a social media app with a long list of users. Instead of overwhelming the app by showing all users at once, pagination displays a few users on each page. This not only makes the app run smoother, but also reduces the load on the client side, requiring less memory and processing power for optimal performance. Now let's see third mistake: ignoring response codes in a REST API. Response codes in a REST API are like messages from the server to the client, telling them what's happening with their request. They are super important because they let you know if something went wrong. For example, if you try to delete a file and it does not work, the response code will tell you why. It's essential not to overlook these codes when using an API. For instance, when everything goes smoothly, you usually see a code like 200, meaning all good. But there are other codes for different situations like 204, which means the request was successful but there is no data to send back. If you only use 200, it might confuse the client because they are expecting some information but don't get any. If you don't pay attention to these codes, your API becomes like a mystery box. You won't know what's happening with the request, which can mess up how your client behaves and break your app's logic. Fourth mistake: inconsistent naming conventions and poor documentation. One of the most important aspects of good API design is consistency in naming conventions. It is crucial to establish a clear and consistent naming scheme for endpoints, methods, parameters, and responses. In addition to consistent naming, well-documented APIs are essential. API documentation should provide a detailed information about each endpoint, including the purpose, input parameters, and expected responses. Proper documentation helps developers understand how to use the API correctly, reducing confusion and improving the overall user experience. Now let's see fifth mistake: not securing APIs properly. Validate user input to prevent injection attacks such as SQL injection or cross-site scripting. By validating and sanitizing inputs, you can ensure that only safe and expected data is processed by the API. Implement rate limiting to prevent abusive use of the API. By setting limits on the number of requests a user can make within a specific time frame, you can protect against denial of service attacks and ensure fair usage of system resources. Thank you for watching the video until the end. Please comment down below if you found this video interesting, and please do like, share and subscribe.